Joining me today is John Katzenbach and Gretchen Anderson. They are the co-authors of The Critical Few, Energize Your Company's Culture by Choosing What Really Matters. And it's a real pleasure. Welcome to the program.
Hi, and apologies. This is Gretchen Anderson. Frankie, you just have me today, my co-author, John Katzenbach.
Fine.
Will be joining. Okay, great.
First of all, we've been hearing an awful lot about company culture. And explain to us in the book, The Critical Few, Energize Your Company's Culture by Choosing What Really Matters. Can you hear me, Gretchen?
Yes, I can. I think I lost the second half of that sentence.
Oh, I just wanted you to explain a little bit about what we're talking about in the culture of the company, because we've been hearing an awful lot about this lately.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the way we pick up the definition of culture is a complicated ecosystem that accounts for many things, right? It accounts for how people think and feel and behave. It's the water an organization swims in. We think it's a big ecosystem kind of thing, and what we're also proposing in the book is that by picking up the question of how to evolve it through focusing on specific behaviors, you're much better equipped and better able to make change and make difference that people can see and feel.
Gretchen, you've been a real pioneer in this emerging field, along with John. If you could just share with us, give us some direct examples of what we're talking about and where companies need to go and how they need to start to change.
I'd love to, Frankie. Thank you for asking. I think one of the most important things, John Katzenbach and James Thomas and I wrote this book based on our collective experience. I've been working in this field for about 15 years, John Katzenbach for 50, and we've been working together on these questions for a decade. Conversations about writing this book started a decade ago. One of the things we know experientially is that leadership teams focus on culture, think they like to talk about culture, understand that culture is a business issue, and we know this experientially and from our survey data, but that they really, really struggle to understand what is it from the experience of a line person within that organization, what is it that they need to do differently to make them feel that culture matters and culture is important.
So when we saw, we were all so horrified, last year when a few men were sitting in Starbucks having a meeting and waiting for the other man, and the arrest took place, and then, of course, Starbucks became very much involved in changing the way in which they do business and doing training and all of that. Was that an example of how the culture there needed to change?
It's a great example, and of course, John Katzenbach and I were, texting back and forth the day that story came out. It's exactly the kind of question that organizations come to us with all the time. I'm not in a position to speak specifically about what was happening at Starbucks. I do think that when something happens like that gets attention and it's so shocking, I do believe that it is a symptom of how a culture of an organization can be struggling to catch up with that organization's strategy and purpose, right? You would talk to leaders of any organization and they would say they would not want something like that to happen. They would want to create an inclusive environment. If I were talking to an organization like Starbucks that had just experienced something like that, my first question would be, where's this misalignment between what we say and how people act? And how can we understand, I would not argue, let's impose something from the outside, let's impose some new model or some new way of training. I would ask, where is the misalignment? You know, how can we find within this organization the source of this disconnect and really get at kind of what some of the core issues were that over time and sort of through turns of the wheel made something like that feel okay to employees?